Welcome to the Book Fair Podcast. My name is Anthony, and this week we have a new picture book by Reading Rainbow host Mychal Threets. A local library is aiming to remove over 2,000 books from shelves. Leaked emails contradict the public reasons given for an author's visit being canceled, and some good news relating to the freedom to read. Let's begin with some new releases, starting with I'm So Happy You're Here, a celebration of library joy by Mychal Threets and illustrated by Lorraine Nam. A librarian who looks very much like debut author Threets, the viral literacy advocate and host of a rebooted Reading Rainbow, kicks off a day of library joy in this affectionate picture book. Standing in a library's doorway, the narrator greets patrons warmly, inviting all inside. You belong here with your mom. You belong here with your dads. You belong here with your abuela. You belong here if you don't have a home. You belong here if you have a home. With simple geometric shapes and crisp lines, illustrator Lorraine Nam depicts characters of various abilities, ages, and skin tones interacting in the bright, expansive spaces of this bustling community hub, which offers not just books to curl up with, but also instruments, games, and even gardening and cooking activities. Always smiling and busy, the librarian protagonist anchors almost every scene, checking out books, leading story time, and presenting a child with a library card, embracing readers and suggesting that among a library's greatest treasures are the people who find their place within its walls. This book is recommended for ages 4 to 8. Next is Mighty Macy by Kwame Alexander with illustrations by Kitt Thomas. In this effervescent chapter book by Kwame Alexander, 80 snappy poems recount a bookish third grader's love for her library. Protagonist Macy can't wait to pick up the next installment of her favorite book series, The Mighty Zora, from the school library. But first, she must practice her violin. Poems relayed primarily in Macy's endearing first-person POV convey feelings of joy, anticipation, and disgruntlement, and burst with humor. In one section, lines get progressively longer as she details staying up late reading. Following rehearsal, Macy arrives at the library only to discover that it's closed due to budget cuts. Resolving to speak up at an upcoming board meeting, she attempts to write a poem she believes will save the institution. Softly rounded illustrations from Thomas emanate charm, accompanying stanzas that provide glimpses into the exuberant life of a self-assured child who readers will wish was their own best friend. Macy's desire to help the library underscores the importance of similar community spaces, culminating in a winning narrative about the power of language and learning to stand up for one's beliefs. Characters are depicted with varying abilities, body types, and skin tones. An author's note concludes, and this book is recommended for ages 6 to 10. The next title to look at is The Aftermyth, first in a new middle grade series by Tracy Wolff. Wolff conjures a Greek mythology-inspired magical school in this lively series launch, a dark academia fantasy. 13-year-old Penelope Weaver's first year at Anaximander's Academy is off to a disastrous start. First, she's attacked by snakes on the bridge leading toward the school, causing her to miss most of the opening assembly. Then, instead of being assigned to studious Athena Hall with her twin brother Paris, and like every other member of her family, she's placed with the fun-loving Aphrodites, whom other students look down upon as unserious. Her frustration dissipates upon meeting her perky roommate Fifi, who becomes Penelope's first real friend. When the annual competition between halls is revealed to be a scavenger hunt relating to items found in Pandora's box, Penelope rallies her fellow Aphrodites to take part, hoping a win will secure their status as students to be reckoned with. Simultaneously, Penelope's relationship with Paris becomes increasingly strained as he begins adopting self-important behaviors learned from his Athena House peers. Penelope also wonders why she seems to be the only one hearing mysterious noises and seeing strange sparkles throughout the campus. Though slim world-building makes for a somewhat befuddling read, white-cued Penelope's refreshing character arc injects effervescent energy into an action-packed volume. This book is recommended for ages 8 to 12. And the final new title to highlight this week is Few Blue Skies by Carolina Ixta. Ixta examines young love, environmental justice, and the cost of integrity in her timely and engaging sophomore novel. High school senior Paloma Vistamontes has felt adrift for more than a year since her childhood best friend and ex-boyfriend Julio Ramos cut contact with her following his father's death. Paloma's pa, who worked alongside Julio's, now leads a strike against their employer, Selva, a distribution center that's allegedly responsible for San Fermin, California's air pollution. The culprit behind Pa's declining health and Julio's father's death. Paloma is shocked when Julio reaches out to enlist her help in researching and writing about the pollution, hoping to use their findings to earn a scholarship to UC Davis, where he intends to study botany and later use his education to benefit the community. Their collaboration reignites their relationship. Meanwhile, the mayor pushes to build a new Selva factory next to Paloma's school. Compelling examinations of accountability, activism, financial insecurity, and staying true to one's principles permeate Paloma's story, which highlights the characters' difficulty grappling with their desire to make a difference while finding their place in the world. Layered depictions of the protagonists' shifting relationships impacted by their ordeal and conveyed in Paloma's clever and vulnerable first-person POV proffer challenging questions about the things one is willing to compromise for both love and justice. An author's note and bibliography conclude, and this book is recommended for ages 14 and up. Next, we'll be looking at some headlines, but first, if you appreciate the work being done on the Book Fair podcast, there are a number of ways to show your support. First, you can like, comment, or follow wherever you are currently listening to help push the show out to new listeners. Second, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at BookFairPod. You can also go to patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early, as well as links to news sources used throughout the show. Following on Patreon is free, and there are no posts hidden behind a paywall. Of course, the best way to help the Book Fair podcast grow is simply to share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Now, on with the show. Let's look at some news, starting with a story out of Tennessee. This first story starts with a vote by Rutherford County Library Board to remove nearly 3,000 titles from shelves across the county. The action stems from a letter sent by State Secretary Trey Hargett, prompting a review of juvenile collections across all state public libraries in Tennessee. This letter was sent in October, and the deadline for libraries to comply was on January 19th. This audit led to library employees working without overtime pay during the holidays to fulfill the request based on a directive from the Trump administration regarding the teaching of gender and standards on what is considered age-appropriate. While the request had no legal weight on communities, the letter from Secretary Hargett could lead to libraries having funding pulled, similarly to what we have seen happen in parts of Florida or Alabama. After the initial review, a total of 2,712 titles were temporarily pulled from library shelves just in Rutherford County. There was a vote this week to decide the fate of all the titles held from initial review, including books about the Holocaust, books on adoption, and even books about in vitro fertilization. While communities are largely responsible for selecting library directors, it seems Rutherford County is reaching a tipping point. In a previous episode of the Book Fair podcast, we covered a frightening story about Rutherford County Library System Director Luann James filing formal complaints against Library Board Chairman Cody York. With this latest vote to remove nearly 3,000 titles within the county, it's time to reflect on these previous allegations against Cody York. Library Director James first raised this complaint in November that York was requesting personal information of patrons if they checked out titles from the public library with LGBTQ+ themes. In her statement, Luann James said, quote, York demanded a break of all zip codes versus addresses of every RCLS e-card holder, stating that he intended to run it through software at his workplace so that his team could identify fake zip codes, end quote. In addition to the blatant violation of privacy, Director James's other grievances against York are guns and weapons in the workplace, interference with Tennessee public records, and a sexual harassment allegation. Even after these remarks at a public hearing, the library board voted 7-2, keeping Cody York as chairman. If you are eligible to vote in your local elections, take this as a reminder to be an informed voter. Make sure that people serving on your school or library boards or local committees are people that you wish to represent your values. People like Cody York and the board members enabling him should not be able to hold positions of power that they can abuse like this. Next, a look at a story that came up while I was taking a break from the podcast, now with an important update. In the aftermath of Texas Senate Bill 12 going into effect, several schools have seen author visits canceled. One author impacted is Chris Barton, author of several picture books and other titles targeting young readers. Barton was set to visit San Antonio, Texas, making appearances at Cambridge and Woodridge Elementary Schools in Alamo Heights ISD. Following complaints by only 3 parents about Barton's picture book, Glitter Everywhere, where it came from, where it's found, and where it's going, the school district canceled the author's visit to over 1,600 students. Barton's book gives a history of glitter and the impact of microplastics on the environment. However, a single line in the 52-page book mentions the significance of glitter for the LGBTQ+ community. Department spokesperson Julie Ann Matonis wrote in an email, quote, as part of planning coordination, we told Mr. Barton about the relevant TEC Code 11.005 prohibition and explained that we didn't see any issue with the plan for his visit and asked him to provide assurances he would not refer to gender identity, sexual orientation, or his book that has the term LGBTQ+ on one of the pages, which would have been a violation of this new law. He refused to agree to those assurances. End quote. However, local news outlet the San Antonio Current was able to obtain emails between Barton and Alamo Heights ISD. The emails, along with statements from Barton, contradict the publicly stated reason for canceling the visit. Quote, I can certainly agree to your request that I not discuss LGBTQ+, gender identity, sexual orientation, or any derivation of those terms, since I never have discussed these in my school presentations, and I am aware that I am not trained or qualified to discuss them with an elementary audience. End quote. After the school district's initial statement, there were dozens of parents attending a school board meeting in opposition to the cancellation. One parent put it best, quote, books need readers and readers need books, which is why I am here to beseech the board to vigilantly guard against actions that may block student access to books and leaders. End quote. Another statement by Chris Barton is available online if you'd like to read it. You can find Chris's statement at chrisbarton.info. You can also check out patreon.com/thebookfair to find episodes posted early, along with links to news sources used throughout the show. Now let's take a look at some rapid-fire headlines, starting with this new library policy out of New Hampshire that will lead to unsettling ripple effects regarding user privacy. This story comes from Manchester City Library in New Hampshire, where beginning this year, parents will be able to track what books their children are borrowing from the public library. The new policy requires confirmation that the person requesting the information is the child's parent or guardian, which library director and vice president of the New Hampshire Library Association, Denise von Zanten, admits that there are logistic challenges involved with confirming the relation of people making requests. According to Zanten, the law leaves each library to decide their own policy procedures to confirm the child is indeed living with the person making the request. This may sound like it's completely reasonable, but aside from the logistical issue of confirming a patron's relations, the concern of privacy is still a problem. Again, another thing that some people may not think about is that every person is owed a reasonable degree of privacy. A legal guardian has rights and protections as a caretaker. However, minors still have a right to privacy. When a law comes up where one person's rights come in conflict with another, we have to decide where we draw the line on infringing someone's rights. While parents and guardians have property rights, when there are issues regarding privacy for the child, we can't blindly side with the guardian. One hypothetical situation might be someone under the age of 18 researching legal ways to become emancipated from their home. Another case might be more serious, with a child wanting to learn about different kinds of abuse in order to help report their caregiver. These kinds of situations would endanger a child living with an abusive parent or guardian. It's easy to say that when you live under someone else's roof, you have to follow their rules, but children need advocates and safe spaces outside of the home. When we give parents full authority to do anything to children just because they are related, it opens the door to abuse. This might sound extreme, but protecting privacy is a serious issue because of these fringe cases. Giving young people autonomy outside of the home is there to protect them. Being a parent does not give complete control over another person, and children are not property. I said, children are not property. Next, a Mississippi court reinstates an educator fired over a book reading. In 2022, Toby Price, assistant principal at Gary Road Elementary, was fired after reading the picture book I Need a New Butt to a group of second graders. This led to a years-long wrongful termination lawsuit against the school board. The Hinds County School Board claimed that the book was inappropriate to be showing in a classroom. Now, on January 27th of 2026, the Mississippi Court of Appeals reversed previous judgments and rendered Price's employment status reinstated. The court also passed the case down to lower courts for further proceedings, including a determination regarding an appropriate amount of back pay for Price if it is deemed necessary. The final story for this week comes from Virginia. House Bill 236 is proposed in the Virginia State Legislature and would create a new chapter dedicated to local, regional, and school library material selection. On its face, a statewide board to oversee library challenges might sound like it would be problematic. However, HB 236 defines censorship in legal terms, would outline procedures for community review of materials instead of having library boards acting unilaterally, and, most importantly, offer legal protections for librarians acting in good faith. The bill is currently being referred to the House Committee of Education for consideration. You can read more about HB 236 through this article at shorenewsnetwork.com, and if you're in Virginia, you should reach out to your state representative and voice support for this bill. This will conclude another episode of the Book Fair podcast. If you'd like to learn more about any of the stories covered today, you can find links to news sources on Patreon at patreon.com/thebookfair. Following is free, and you can find episodes posted early. Simply add the Patreon RSS feed to your preferred podcast platform. Of course, if you'd like to support the Book Fair podcast, all I ask is that you simply share it with a friend, an educator, or a young reader in your life. Thank you so very much for listening, and as always, I'll talk at you next time.